Hello everybody and thanks for watching this video. In this presentation I will talk about proving multi-core schedulers, and more precisely I will focus on proving work conservation in multi-core schedulers. This is joint work with many people from the University of Sydney, many universities in France and Switzerland. Before getting into details, let me first explain what is work conservation. At a high level, work conservation is this idea that no core should be left idle when a core is overloaded. In practice, this situation might happen in state-of-the-art schedulers because state-of-the-art schedulers use one run queue per core, and cores only execute threads waiting in their own run queue. So on this slide, you have a typical not work conserving situation that might happen in Linux, for instance, where 4 threads are waiting in the run queue of core 0 while the rest of the machine is fully idle. As simple as it might seem, we have found that work conservation is often broken in state-of-the-art schedulers. In 2016, we did a study where we found 4 high-impact work conservation bugs in the Linux scheduler. This figure is taken from this study. What it shows is the load of cores over time. So every line represents the load of a given core, and the x-axis represents time. What we can see is that Linux unintentionally leaves 16 cores of the machine mostly idle, while the rest of the machine is mostly overloaded. And this bug happens in a very standard workloads. We just executed 2 applications. In a study we did in 2018, we also found work conservation bugs in the FreeBSD scheduler. And here the situation is a bit more dramatic. We might end up in a situation where the scheduler decides to schedule all threads on a single core while the rest of the machine is idle. And work conservation bugs are hard to detect because they do not cause applications to crash, they do not create any deadlock in the kernel, and they have no obvious symptoms besides the application running slower than they should. Yet, they can have dramatic impact on performance. In the 2016 study, we measured slowdowns of more than 100x on HPC applications and up to 23% on databases running production workloads. So they are hard to detect, and it's also hard to find these bugs using standard testing, because they are very dependent on the mix of applications and the machine on which these applications run. So in this talk, I will argue for a different approach using formal proofs. To do proofs, we need a formal definition of work conservation. Reusing the intuition from the first slide, we can write what is work conservation mathematically. If there exists a core which is overloaded, then all other cores of the machine shouldn't be idle. But surprisingly, this definition doesn't work on realistic schedulers, and let me explain why. Schedulers are a very critical piece of code in kernels, and they have to handle many events concurrently. And they have to do so with very low overhead. As a result, schedulers tend to use what we call optimistic concurrency. What we mean by optimistic concurrency is that schedulers often observe the state of the machine without taking logs. So typically what a scheduler would do is observe the state of all cores of the machine, then take a log on a specific core and act on the specific core. But the issue is the action might be based on possibly outdated observations. Let me show you why this is problematic. So let's assume that core 1 wants to perform a load balancing event. What core 1 would typically do is it would observe the state of all cores of the machine, so it would count how many threads are waiting on every run queue. Then it would take the log of the buzzes core. But because the observations were made outside of the critical section, it is very possible that the state of core 0 is no longer the state that core 1 observed while it was making its choice. For instance, it is very possible that all threads that were waiting on core 0 have been blocked or have terminated before core 1 is able to take its lock. And then what happens is that when core 1 tries to steal threads from core 0, it will fail to do so. And I would like to insist that this is a perfectly acceptable scenario for a scheduler, because taking locks on all cores of the machine would have too much overhead. So the trade-off of failing once in a while is very acceptable. The thing is, then this trade-off has to be taken into account in the definition of work conservation. The naive definition is not enough. In practice, what we do is to change the definition of what does it mean to be overloaded or to be idle by taking into account possible concurrent events that might cause load balancing to fail. So for instance, we say that a core is overloaded if it has 2 or more threads, but only if the threads were not recently created by a concurrent event. So if a fork, for instance, or if a thread was unblocked concurrently with a load balancing, we do not consider that the core is overloaded. And we do the same for the definition of idleness. All details are in the paper if you are interested. So now that we have a formal definition of what does it mean to be work conserving, we can think about proving actual code. The issue is that schedulers are a very optimized piece of code because they routinely handle millions of events per second. And as some of you might know, optimized code and proofs usually do not play well together. So we needed a solution to write code that would be both efficient and very easy to prove. And our solution to this challenge is to use a domain-specific language. Using a DSL has many advantages over proving low-level C code. The main one is we trade expressiveness for robustness. So we do not authorize the usage of pointers in the DSL code, and we deal with memory allocation and the allocation automatically for the user. So it means that separation logic is easier to prove, and many properties can be proven at compilation time. In the DSL, we also have a notion of explicit concurrently. So only variables that are marked as shared can be accessed by multiple cores. And as you will see, this will simplify the proofs, the concurrent proofs, quite a lot. And finally, because the DSL is tailored for schedulers, we are able to compile the code into efficient C code that can be executed in the kernel. At a high level, what we do is we compile the DSL both into YML code for the proofs and into C code that is compiled into a kernel module that will be run as a scheduling class. Let me give you an intuition of how we do the proofs. Because we want to do concurrent proofs, we have to reason on the interleavings of all possible scheduler events. And by scheduler events, I do not only mean event 1 runs after event 0, but event 1 runs simultaneously with event 0. So what we do is we have to split events into basic blocks. For us, a basic block is some piece of code that performs one read or one write to a shared variable. And then we simulate the concurrent execution of an arbitrary number of blocks. And we prove that some invariants are maintained at the end of the execution of every block so that we can prove that the work conservation property holds at the end of the load balancing event. In practice, this approach is made tractable because we use the DSL. Indeed, in our DSL, all shared variables are explicit, so it is very easy to split the code into blocks. Also, we have very few shared variables because most of the complexity of the code is hidden by the DSL. So we have very few blocks and the simulation is easy to make. We have implemented 3 policies in our DSL and we have proven work conservation for these policies. The first 2 policies, CFS CWC and CWC flat, are inspired by CFS, the default Linux scheduler. The main difference between these 2 policies is that the first one reproduces locality heuristics of CFS, such as placement on NUMA nodes and cache hierarchy, while the second one doesn't. And the third policy, ULE CWC, is inspired by ULE, the default FreeBSD scheduler. So because we care about work conservation, we first wanted to show that our work conserving policies spread the load better than CFS does. So these 2 graphs represent the first 0.8 seconds of execution of ft.c under CFS on the top and our work conserving version of CFS on the bottom. White means that a core is idle, gray means that a core has 1 thread, and red means that a core has 2 or more threads. What we can see for CFS is that during the initialization phase, during the first 0.2 seconds, the load is very poorly distributed, with half of the machine being overloaded and half of the machine being idle. And even after this initialization phase, we still have red lines paired with white lines, which means that quite regularly CFS is not work conserving. In our graph, after the initialization phase, the load is perfectly balanced on all cores and we do not have any work conservation issue. We have a small period during the initialization phase where some cores have 2 threads while other cores are idle, and this situation is due to the load balancing failing to balance the load once at the beginning of the execution, which is perfectly acceptable for under our work conserving definition. One positive aspect of balancing the load better is a gain in performance. So these graphs present the execution time of multiple NAS applications, and lower is better. In blue, green, and purple are the 3 policies we implemented, and CFS is in black. And as you can see, on most applications, because our policies balance the load better, they also perform better than CFS. We have also tested our work concerning policies on more complex applications. So this graph presents the number of requests per second of MySQL, varying the number of clients. And what we can see is we have comparable performance to CFS on all tested configurations. So what have we seen during this talk? First, we have seen that the standard definition of work consideration is too naive to be used in practice, and that a more complex definition is required. Second, we have seen that using a DSL is a good idea to ease the proving effort. In our situation, the DSL is mainly used to know which variables are accessed concurrently, and this knowledge allows us to reduce the number of interleavings we need to simulate to do the proofs. And finally, we have implemented 3 scheduling policies in our DSL, and we have seen that these policies perform as well or better than the standard vanilla policies used in Linux and FreeBSD. And so with that, I would like to thank you for watching this video.